Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining the SOAR webinar series today. I am Brittany Howell, the Marketing Director here at SOAR. We just wanted to start with some housekeeping rules really quickly. This will be recorded. And so we just ask that you stay on mute, but at the end, we will have a Q&A opportunity where you can unmute, you can chat with John Wilson, ask any questions that you may have from the webinar. We also want you to feel free to chat with us during this. In the chat bar, you can submit questions there, as well as just let us know how you're enjoying it. John's going to ask you some questions as well, so be prepared to answer in there. Also, if you enjoy these, we have tons of websites on our, or tons of webinars recorded on our website. So you can visit that at soarnc.org/webinars, as well as a list of the upcoming webinars for the year. Next month, the month of May, we will be doing a webinar on finishing the school year strong. So we hope to see all of you guys there and join us. John Wilson will be hosting today. He's the Executive Director here at SOAR. And so I'm going to give it away to him.
Thanks so much. It is always a pleasure to get a chance to connect with all of you. And we were asked, we've asked, what topics do you want us to explore and to cover? And this was one of those topic items. And so let's get started. Failure to launch, or it's all otherwise known as Peter Pan syndrome. Certainly there was a movie years ago, but it is a significant challenge to our community. And so I wanted to kind of take a look at causes. And really it's never just one thing. It's a domino effect of things that create the situation that lead to to these challenges. And so I'm just going to review what I have found in the research as being some of the primary challenges. A fear of failure. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to get out and do because I'm afraid it's not going to work. And sometimes that fear comes from a belief that I don't believe that I don't believe I can be successful. And you have seen it, in the age of trophyism, lack of grit and an unwillingness to sort of embrace the suck is a challenge. Lack of sleep, and at our house, our son is a gamer, and left to his own devices, I believe he would probably stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning every night, gaming, and then sleep in until noon or 1, and then start the cycle again. And that cycle begets a very difficult structure that affords somebody the ability to kind of move forward. Habitual drug use, clearly sometimes people who get involved with marijuana use, there tends to be a lack of motivation, and part of that is that when you start taking those kinds of drugs on a regular basis, it inhibits your natural production of the chemical in your body that induces happiness, and so you can't get that naturally, and so you continue to use in order to feel that sense of contentment, and it doesn't afford you the opportunity to kind of move forward in life in a thoughtful, purposeful way. Developmental traumas can really hold folks back and create barriers to moving forward. And the truth is, if they knew how and had the coping mechanisms and the skills, they would. Because people want to succeed. Their brains are wired differently than other people's brains, so sometimes the issues of anxiety or impulsivity, get in the way, or how they learn differently. There's the concept of a fixed growth versus, fixed thinking versus growth mindset. And fixed thinking is, this is the way, this is all I can do, this is, what I am good at. And then, the growth mindset is one where you're looking for opportunities to push and challenge yourself. And sometimes our kids just don't have that. Parental expectations. Sometimes your expectations of what they're going to do next don't align with their expectations about what's going to happen. And so it creates this stall pattern that that can be quite disruptive to that experience. Sometimes their personal expectations are just way too rigid and too high. They they want to start, in a leadership position somewhere instead of working up the ranks. They they don't see the value in having to trudge through the work in order to obtain the benefits of experience. Being perfect out of the gate seems way too unobtainable, and that circles back to that kind of fear of failure. And then again, they're not on track with their peers, and sometimes that can create this dynamic that just continues to kind of feed that cycle. If adolescence ends when the purse strings are cut, then it used to be that maybe some of the purse strings were cut when they graduated from high school, and if we were helping them support in college, then when they graduated from college, they could then be responsible for their own finances. But what we're finding in so many of our population is that adolescence isn't really ending until 27, 28. And I know all of you are so interested. I mean, we have so many folks that are part of this webinar because you recognize that that's happening. And quite frankly, it causes some anxiety for you and some worry and some frustration. So we're going to look at ways that we can potentially deal with that. When people begin to avoid things, avoidance reinforces avoidance. Social anxiety may lead to avoidance. Avoiding becomes a habit. Coping mechanisms, and when we allow for that, coping mechanisms don't get developed. And the next thing you know, 5-10 years have gone by and your kid forgot to live their life. They spent it in their room or in the man cave in the basement, or just kind of doing the bare minimum to get by. And that's really sad, because with a little bit of energy and effort on the onset, we absolutely, as human beings, need stimulus to drive us. It is true that so many of our kids do suffer from a lack of grit. They're unwilling to be uncomfortable, or they avoid discomfort. They've not embraced the struggle. They're afraid of setbacks and are overwhelmed by the thought of them. They give up easily rather than persevere. Sometimes they'll take the path of least resistance, or they just simply don't know where to start. I've told this story before, but with my son, he was having a particularly difficult day, and he indicated that he didn't want to be alive, and that's what he said to his mom. I raced home, and what he meant by that was, today was a day that I wish I wasn't me, not I want to hurt myself. And so we did a little exercise that day that has been life-changing for us. And what I did is I taught him how to start a fire with flint and steel. And when I did it, it looked easy. It's practiced. I've done it hundreds of times. And then I handed him the flint and steel, and he worked and worked and worked and worked at it, and he couldn't get the fire to light. And I said to him, so when you get it to light, you can come on inside. And he said, I can't come inside until I start the fire. And I'm like, no, buddy, this is what I want you to do. And then he asked anything that a little 13-year-old would do. He'd say, forever? And I said, no, not forever. Just, but this is what I want you to do. And so he worked at it for 20, 30 minutes. And, finally he was able to start the fire. And he jumped up like, Tom Hanks in Castaway. I have made fire. And the lesson I was trying to teach him is that Very few things in life are especially rewarding unless they took effort and energy to achieve them. And if we do not allow for these young people to be able to persevere and embrace the suck and actually have experiences where they learn from their failure, then we are depriving them of the ingredients that go into creating grit. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about grit, I did an entire webinar on the idea of grit, but it is essential to that process. And the other reason I wanted to mention it is that, you know, many of you may have young adults that are in that failure to launch phase right now. But for those of you that are watching that have 12, 13, 14-year olds, the time to start nurturing the development of grit is as early as possible, because it is those coping mechanisms that will afford folks the opportunity to be successful as they move forward. The lie of social media, Facebook and Instagram lie. Not everybody is living the dream. Folks have challenges that are not posted, but when they look, and my daughter is awful about this, she compares herself against the other people's reality on Instagram, and it's just not true. Some become overwhelmed when comparing their own reality to the fantasy presented on social media. And so, one of the keys to allowing folks to kind of move forward is teaching young people the skill. And by the way, for some of you, this applies to you as well, to put the phone down. Make a plan to help someone, get outside, volunteer, learn something, improve your surroundings, create connections, create real connections, get out and do something. Because sometimes the lie of social media creates avoidance because you're not as successful as the others. What now? So I built this little character. If we build it, will they go? And so I'm kind of moving into the phase of this webinar where I'm going to talk about strategies. And some of these strategies are for young people to do themselves, and some of them are for you as parents to nurture and to consider how to create opportunities. And what I'm going to review is values clarification, creating a mission statement, writing out goals and measurable objectives, taking little steps, important life skills that you want to nurture, how to become empowered, learn to problem solve, taking advantage of opportunities, and then how do I be the best me, and then I'm going to talk about how to get up and get going. Okay, core values. So the first thing that I ask folks is to do values clarification. And what I'm looking for is, what are my core values? My core values are honesty, integrity, kindness, faith, being helpful. Those are my core values. And then I take those core values and then I write a personal mission statement. If I had to break down into one sentence what my personal mission statement was, or it could be 2 or 3 sentences, what do I see as my mission? And so unless you've really taken a hard look at what your core values are, what really matters to you, and then thought about, this is my mission. All right. And is one of your core values having things? Is one of your core values, having friends? And so once you've looked at your core values, it allows for you to kind of create a personal mission statement. And that mission statement then guides how you're going to move forward and the goals you want to achieve. I would encourage all of you listening to do this exercise, to do some values clarification, find a list of values, and then go through it and choose your top 5 or 10 that really speak to who you are, and then write a personal mission statement. And then if you found that to be thoughtful and enlightening, then I would encourage you to have your young adults do the same. I do these exercises with leadership groups all over the country, and we spend half a day exploring values clarification. And by lunchtime, we've written a personal mission statement, and it is incredibly powerful. All right, taking little steps. All right, Here are some little steps that that folks moving into adulthood can do. Create a LinkedIn account. All right. Start developing your network. Make a budget for yourself. And then on a monthly basis, balance that budget. It's a little thing, but it means so much. Update your resume and then find opportunities that add value to your resume so that you can include them. Sometimes that happens by volunteering. And volunteering can be a big one, because if we are not out there in the workforce and we are still at home and we've created a situation where we don't want them out on the street, and so we've allowed for that to happen, requiring some type of volunteership can be a really, really great opportunity for folks to, again, pad the resume, build skills, and create contacts. And then finally, organize your responsibilities. These are the things that I have to do. These are my roles. These are my responsibilities. And so often as parents, we get caught up in the inevitability that our kid is never going to leave. And, we forget that sometimes it's just about these little baby steps. It doesn't take long to create a LinkedIn account and then do a search and see, and how to promote, and then post things on your LinkedIn account. Employers are looking at people's LinkedIn accounts. It's happening. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about life success attributes, because, so much of what SOAR is and who we are is based on the work done from the Frostig Institute on life success opportunities. So there are these 6 life success, and these 6 characteristics, these 6 life skills were identified as the key components to the difference between a young person moving into adulthood and having success, which includes being able to hold a job, maintain relationships, feel a sense of life contentment, versus not holding a job, feeling like set adrift, not being able to maintain relationships. These 6 attributes seem to be the difference. The first was self-awareness. Am I aware of my strengths? Do I know my challenges? Am I aware of my talents and abilities? Furthermore, what are my values? And they're able to compartmentalize and match their strengths to different activities in their life. The next is learning how to be proactive. Do I participate in activities, and do I feel in control of my world? I can evaluate situations, make decisions, and take responsibility. And when you think about the Peter Pan syndrome, or the folks that are caught in the basement and are moving towards becoming shut-ins, this is one of the major pieces that is missing. They are not participating in life. Am I able to persevere? I call that one grit. Can I deal with obstacles and work despite those difficulties? Can I adjust and change? And am I able to quit and not just keep at something long beyond the point of reasonability? Being able to persevere is critical to having some measure of success. Am I able to set goals? Do I set and prioritize realistic goals? And am I able to develop action steps and overcome those obstacles as they approach? Absolutely critical to being able to move forward in life. Do I have a healthy support network? Do I know when support is needed? Can I ask for support? Do I utilize my support network? And so, and all of these questions are questions I encourage you to ask yourself. Are you role modeling these life success attributes in a way that are healthy for your kids to watch? Do I have emotional coping skills? Do I know how emotions impact behavior, stress, and frustration? Am I able to develop coping mechanisms and use my supports when needed? Because if I'm continually reacting to life instead of being proactive, then I'm just a pinball in a pinball machine getting bounced around, and I'm not setting my own path. I love this slide, the power of empowerment. And this is you. This is the key slide in this webinar that really talks about your approach, because how you present information and provide support matters. How you talk to your kids matters. Have you been fostering choices? Do you understand that, as young adults move into this range of being 17, 18, 19, it really is time for them to start taking more responsibility regarding their decisions, and for you to take a bit of a backseat, and transition from decider to supporter. And giving up that control is really difficult, but it is better for folks to actually have a chance to feel like they are steering their own course and are making their decisions, instead of feeling like you're still at the helm and they're participants. Have you created the power to allow these young folks to make these decisions? What is their truth? And so often their truth is not your truth. I'll give an example of a family. This young man really kind of wanted to branch out and try some very different things than what his parents wanted or supported, and it created such conflict. Eventually, he capitulated and went the way they wanted him to go, and he failed out of college within the first year. At that point, the parents had kind of thrown up their hands, and then tacitly, because they didn't know what else to do, supported the path that he wanted to go. He's an entrepreneur with 3 businesses. He's been very successful, and it's because finally he was able to steer his own course and guide his own path. If that control is not provided, and you aren't able to make that transition, then you are enabling the ideals that prevent them from being able to step out and fail forward with confidence. The whole idea about failing forward is this: that in life we're going to make mistakes. It's what we do with those mistakes and what we learn from those mistakes and how we move forward based on those mistakes that allow us the opportunity to really do something with that information. And then, I would encourage you to think about outsourcing accountability. Have them identify a accountability buddy who they're talking to and are meeting with, and they're holding each other accountable, or consider hiring an ADHD coach or a life coach who'll help kind of walk them through, because at some point you really need to become a supporter and not a decider. And at some point they stop listening to the depth that you want them to listen to. I'm going to give you an example from my own life that I shared recently with one of our academy participants. And it was, and again, I'm not recommending you do something like this, but I am recommending that you know and understand your kids in a way that allow you to make choices that are in their best interest. I had terrible senioritis. I was really struggling to get anything done. And I think I was a month and a half or 2 months from graduation. And I came to my dad and I said, Dad, I think I'm going to drop out of high school and join the Coast Guard. Now, think about, well, how would you react if your son, who was just 2 months away from graduating from high school, said to you, I'm going to throw that all away and I'm going to join the Coast Guard? Well, my dad didn't miss a beat, and he turned around. And again, he did what he did because he knew me well enough to know that it would work. And what he said to me was, well, John, that's probably not a bad idea, because quite frankly, I've come to believe that you're not college material. Now, some kids, if you were to say something like that, they would just fold like a deck of cards. My dad was banking on the fact that he had just told me that I couldn't do something. And he knew that if I'm told I can't do something, I'm going to go the opposite way. And so I took great delight in making the dean's list my first semester of college, and taking my transcript and throwing it down like I was throwing down the gauntlet to prove him wrong. And you know what that son of a gun did? He winked at me. So at some point, though, the point I'm trying to make is, you have to afford and allow your children to start becoming the masters of their own destiny and help start steering their own course. Goal setting. It's a skill that has to be refined. And this is my goal setting matrix. Assess, plan, implement, evaluate. It's called API. Now there are others, but this one really resonates with me for a variety of reasons. But one of them, it's what I'm taught to do as a therapeutic recreation specialist. The first thing you do is you assess. What do you assess? You assess, what are my resources? What is it that I really want to achieve? What are all the ingredients that are going to go into, and get those collected before I make a plan? The next piece is I create a plan. I form a strategy to accomplish the goal that I'm really trying to achieve. And then I implement that plan. And then I examine whether or not I failed or I was successful. And I evaluate that. And that sends me back to the assessment. Were there resources that I didn't have or needed? Was my goal really my goal? And then I'm going to make a new plan. But what do our kids do? All right. And so I'm going to open up the chat bar. Where do you think on this scale our young people start the API process?
They just want to implement. They don't have any kind of plan.
They don't have a plan. They go right to implement. Anybody else? All right. I'm just going to work hard. You're right. Our kids, and thanks for that. Our kids are absolutely just like that. They jump right to implementation. All right, and they do. They go right to implement. Now, for years, I tried to buck that because that's not how API works. You're not supposed to do implement first. You're supposed to assess first. And this is what I have learned. And if you've heard me speak about this before, you've heard this before. But why is them going straight to the implementation phase okay for me? Why do I allow for that? Anybody?
I mean, I'm excited, like especially my daughter, that she's just doing something. She's getting out. She's taking an initiative to some initiative there to get going.
There's the stimulus of action.
What's that?
The stimulus of action. Stimulus of doing something.
All right, the stimulus of doing something, but the point for me is their implementation, which is bound to fail. You know what that really is? It's their assessment, because now they know what they didn't know before they started, and now they can examine. Okay, this is where I made my mistakes, and so they do this evaluation, and they go back to assessment. And so for our kids, it really does become implement. Leap, ouch. All right, why did that work? And then what? And now they can make a plan. And this is where you can provide great support. And the challenge for you is this: don't be the one who's making the plan. Don't be the decider of the plan. Be the one who is encouraging the process, because they have to learn from the process. Because if you cannot do quality goal setting and problem solving, then how are you going to have those skills until you absolutely need them? We are trying to nurture and create opportunities for young people to get these skills, because once they have them, they're able to achieve goals. All right. Another one is, how do I be the best version of me? And so in our gap year program, we spend a lot of time thinking about this. Nutrition. Are there things I eat that set me back? Are there things I eat that allow for me to kind of get into the zone? Sleep. The more I learn about sleep, the more insidious I know it to be as a key to failure if we don't get enough sleep. And so how do we create our lives around getting good, healthy sleep? Exercise. Having exercise in our life and actually getting out and doing things matters. Creating work-life balance. It can't all be gaming. It can't all be play. How do we create a balance so that we are providing opportunities to achieve some of the things, the professional goals that we've established, but also how do we play in a way that is rejuvenating? And in one of my last webinars, I said, no great story ever began with, there I was at the computer. What are our spending habits, and are they healthy? Are they not healthy? Do I notice that I'm spending money on things that don't bring me joy or satisfaction? Understanding when you function best. What time of day do I function at my optimum? And so are there things I want to be doing that are important when I function the best? What are the factors that put me into the zone? And you've all been in the zone, right? When that it all just seems to be flowing exactly, the way it needs to. We're completely on point. We're getting things done. Well, there are, and that happens fairly organically, but there are things that when you really examine when you were in the zone, my guess is that you'd had enough sleep. You were probably at a level of stimulation and arousal and excitement about something that you were engaging in. Your nutrition was probably on point. And there are several factors that went into play that allowed you to get there. But inversely, what are the pitfalls that take you away from the zone and actually derail you? And if we really were to examine that, and again, this is something that I encourage you to have, young people do for themselves. Very often, those pitfalls are habits. Those pitfalls are habits. In the chat bar, go ahead and throw out some of those pitfalls so that other people can kind of, gauge from each other. Is your experience the same as other people's experiences? And I will say that sleep hygiene is just so incredibly important. And so some suggestions I have about sleep are: one, if the circadian rhythms are completely, messed up, go camping for 3 days. You will reset. Also, there is an optimal sleeping temperature, and that sleeping temperature is, I think it's like 68 to 72 degrees. And then the other is, turning off electronics an hour before bedtime, because seeing a screen actually stimulates your brain. Okay, let's take a look at using other opportunities. If your child has a vehicle, how do you use the vehicle as a vehicle to grow? Have them obtain their own insurance. Have them get the inspection done. Learn how to change a tire. Organize the inside of your vehicle. Make it your own. Be prepared for any emergency, and have like an emergency kit in your vehicle. Learn basic maintenance. And then create a next goal regarding what your next vehicle might be and how you might be able to accomplish that. Again, this goes back to little steps. But when we take advantage of little opportunities and we actually create the opportunity for them to do what it takes to obtain their own insurance and to get the inspection done and allow them the experience of doing it correctly, then we create opportunities for them to grow. Getting up and get out. As I was doing research, one of my favorite things I heard was get up and get out. Get up and get going. Nurture a hobby. Kids who go to summer camp year after year or have diverse experiences tend to be more successful. Create volunteerism and service learning as a part of your child's life as they move into upper adolescence. Consider a gap year if they're not ready for college. Get outside. Put together a schedule. Create goals. And then learn how deeply satisfying it is to cross that goal off. Anything new is a positive step and is good as long as it's not destructive. Now, this is kind of a fun, I call this my PDCA dial, and it is a examination. So plan, create your list of and objectives. All right. The next step is to identify and eliminate the barriers to success. The next opportunity is to act. All right, or check. Find an accountability buddy. I cannot stress that finding an accountability buddy who is not your parent can be a really healthy step in this process. And then the last in the PDCA dial is to act, get up, and get going. I'm going to suss that out just a little bit for you. And, again, in that plan phase, Commit to the following: write a mission statement, create a LinkedIn profile, make a menu, build a budget. Just commit to doing something. All right. Now, in the do a values clarification exercise, update your resume, examine what brings out your best, and then the things that bring you down. The next piece, in the check category, identify a person that will help keep you accountable. And you know what? Sometimes if it's a partnership, two people, they hold each other accountable. And so there's tremendous opportunity in learning if you are the one who is giving guidance to somebody else and they're doing the same for you. And that reciprocity allows for honest, incredible dialogue that can be very forward moving. And then finally, act, follow through. Following through is that piece. And your accountability buddy can really help make sure that happens. Check completed tasks off your list and set new goals as you continue to find success. Because in the end, success does in fact foster more success. I've added, and this PowerPoint will be up on the site tomorrow. I've added some resources. We did our top 60 ADHD coaches, Gap Year Association. One of the articles that I looked at for this and developing this was from Scientific American on failure to launch syndrome. Take a look at our gap year if that might be something that could be a healthy choice for your child. Also, Elaine Taylor-Klaus from Impact Parents was particularly helpful in helping me create some of the strategies and the thoughts behind some of the concepts that we're talking about here. And then, as always, Chad and LDA can be great resources for you. So with that in mind, I will open up the floor for any questions or thoughts that people have or want to discuss. But it was a pleasure having a chance to talk with you. And as always, if your family is struggling with this and you've been a SOAR participant, you are welcome to give us a call and we want to help. Any questions? Wow, I covered it all. So no questions, huh? That's awesome.
John, it's Suzanne Danhauer. I have a question.
Sure. Yes, Suzanne.
Hi there. How commonly do you see this? Like in your description of a lot of the behaviors, I can see my 16-year-old, and I'm just wondering, how often is it that these kids as adolescents go on and make it through college or take a break and then finish just fine? And how often is it that you really do see failure to launch?
So it's a continuum, right, Suzanne? And so I think many people that I meet at conferences or families that I talk to, most of them are lamenting that their adolescent, their young adult aren't as far along as they would expect them to be. And so I can't really give you a percentage, but I do know that it does appear that things are, that our society is allowing for more of this to occur than we used to. Where this is really an issue is when you have a deep sense of social anxiety, and then you have kids that are self-medicating, and then you also have a family situation that has enabled sort of this paralysis. At that point, this is probably beyond your control to do by yourself, and you may want to seek additional support and via a therapist, or there are organizations out there that are specifically focused on helping people overcome some of these challenges. But there are certainly things that you can do prior to getting there that could be successful that I explained in my webinar.
John, another question we have from Amy is, the advice we hear is the student must find their motivation and passion. Parents, others can't do this for them. Your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. I've been, I've been privately encouraging parents for years to set aside their vision of what their child's future might be and start listening. And in our gap year program, we really try and work with our families to look at and explore, their own biases when it comes to that. If just in our house, if we had our way, we saw our son be able to, debate quite excellently. And, and our daughter is just has a tremendous passion for people. Our vision for them would have been, he would be a lawyer and she would be a counselor. But that's not what they want to do. And so, my son found his passion in history and in archaeology, and that's the path he wants to take. And my daughter recognized that initially she wanted to go and be a pediatrician. She wanted to be a singing pediatrician, was her childhood dream, but she wasn't particularly great in math and science. So, but you know what she does? She's an amazing artist, an absolutely amazing artist. And so, my guess is that her life will have art and creativity as part of who she is. And I have to afford them the opportunity to become who they are instead of who I want them to be.
We did have a comment from Beth as well. If you were to view your chat, it says, I am the one in the family struggling, LOL. How to bring others on board. Looking for gap year app for high school junior and waiting ADHD DX from Kaiser. Father with ADHD SX, but throw in the deep end is his plan.
Yeah, so two things about that. The first is, when you throw somebody to the deep end, what's the next statement in that equation? They will either do what or what? They will either sink or they will swim. And then my question to somebody who might say that is, please tell me when drowning was ever a growth experience for somebody, right? And while I recognize and appreciate and advocate for young people to be able to learn from their failure and not rescue them, I do believe that supports need to be in place so that they can self-rescue. And so making sure that we can provide that kind of an opportunity is, for me, critical to the opportunity to allow them to be successful. And so what are those supports? What are those lifelines that we can throw out to our kids? And one is a listening ear. Another one is, being able to pivot. Another one is having an escape plan. But here's my argument for gap years, and and again, I understand I have a bias because my program has a gap year, but I think a gap year is one of the most sensational opportunities that a young person could possibly have, and not just with us, but any kind of a gap year experience, as long as it wasn't just a drifting year. Because when are you ever going to have that opportunity where you can really invest in becoming who you are and finding your passion? And if you were able to do that in a gap year, think how far ahead you're going to be from other folks who reach college. I mean, gap years are so powerful that in an acceptance letter from Harvard, it says, "Welcome to Harvard. Have you considered a gap year? We'll defer your enrollment for a year." People who graduate from, who've done a gap year typically graduate faster than folks who haven't done a gap year. And they're formative. And so, one of my resources is the Gap Year Association. Check that out, because I think that there's so many more positives to considering a gap year than there are negatives.
Thanks, John. And we also have a question from Alex. How do we encourage our 20-somethings to use what they learned in college to advance in their careers? My son majored in econ, but is now doing landscaping. Interesting work, but not very satisfying for him.
All right. So I, you know, we have an upcoming webinar later this year that is going to address that. But I'll give you my little snapshot. You know, one is start thinking about what it is that you want. And when I talked about creating a LinkedIn profile, that's no small thing. The other thing that you want to start doing is you want to start cleaning up your Facebook profile, if you have Facebook, or your Instagram profile, because employers are going to look for that and seek that. The next thing you're going to want to do is if you find yourself working as in lawn care, great, you're bringing in money, you're sort of, getting your feet underneath you. But what is it that you think you might want to do? And then is there a way to volunteer or provide, learning opportunities, or take online courses or seminars or training opportunities that will move you in the direction of where you want to go? When people graduate from college, they're not really equipped to necessarily work here at SOAR. We have a 2.5-week summer staff training that we do. And very often folks will say, this was more powerful than anything I ever did in college, because there's the application of real life experience and really thoughtful training. But there are other trainings out there that can really open people's eyes. And when you have an opportunity to experience some of those things, it really does create passion for moving forward instead of feeling like you're stuck. And so, my advice to you, Alex, would be, look at some of those little baby steps, see if they're doing some of those things, and then maybe be willing to sponsor your 20-year-old to attend a 3-day training seminar of his choice, and see if that doesn't create some fire.
We also have a question from Pierre, just what your opinion is of wilderness therapy.
So, one of my professors in graduate school actually wrote the book on wilderness therapy. I mean, literally, the book is called Wilderness Therapy. And I think it has a place, and I think there are some programs out there that do it really, really well. I think, unfortunately, there are also some programs out there that have not that have not been as successful, or have done it in a way that I am a fan of, and so we chose at SOAR to disassociate ourselves from anything that was therapeutic and really more life growth oriented.
Thank you. So we have a comment from Mary. Honestly, I think some of my child's failure to launch stems from my own failure to launch, and I'm having trouble trying to help him, especially when he doesn't want to see an accountability coach. Any suggestions? We both need something.
Well, Mary, the first thing I would do is I would find an accountability buddy for myself. And I would start role modeling those things for me that were being successful. And a coach, again, the accountability coach doesn't have to be a paid person. It could be, you don't want to have a coach? Find one of your friends that you're willing to have a really honest dialogue with. Is there a mentor that you've had in your past that might be willing to, kind of check in with you and just be somebody that you're willing to say, hey, this is what's going on. And again, any quality task only becomes a quality do list item if it has a specific action and a target date. And so I think those are some keys to being successful there.
From Deborah, we have, what of the young person whose anxiety for which he is receiving treatments has led him to state he has no strong interest? He is willing to try things that others suggest pre-COVID. was doing volunteer work, but has not found anything he is passionate about or wants to pursue?
Okay. It is the lucky life. And again, luck is when preparation meets opportunity, but it is the lucky life that gets to pursue a career in something they are passionate about. For that young man, I would do a skills aptitude vocational training or test. And what are your skills? What skills do you possess that would lead to the following careers? And then say, listen, pick one of these, and then let's see if we can get you some training to see which of those might be the most enjoyable for you, because we want to do things that we're good at. But not everybody gets to pursue a life of passion.
Thank you, John. Okay, we say from Frances, how would you start a conversation with your ADHD kid around attending a gap year?
Well, I think I would, that's a tough one. I'll tell you what I did. And perhaps the Gap Year Association has a really good answer to that question. But what I did was, I threw out there to my son, because he had indicated that he was interested in hiking the Appalachian Trail. And I said I would fund 6 months of his life if he wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail as a gap year. And then he made the decision. And ultimately, he's decided, by the way, this is breaking news. He's decided to go to App State. But I would create choices. There are 3 routes you could go. And I'll use his name, Jay. You could try and get a job right out of high school. We could look at doing a gap year and pursuing some things that might be really incredible opportunities. Here's a couple that I found that might really interest you. Or, you can go the college route. And there are pros and cons to each. Let's talk about that. And so really what I'm doing is I'm presenting the options versus trying to say, I've decided I want you to do a gap year, and these are the 3 gap years, please choose one. Again, it's all part of allowing young people to become masters of their destiny.
All right, we have a few more. Dina asked, what's your thought on a family member, grandfather, similar aged cousin, being enlisted as an accountability coach or mentor?
I think that's a wonderful idea, as long as, your son or daughter has identified them as a good potential option.
Okay, we have Alex saying, how do I get my 12-year-old son with ADHD to explore activities other than video games? It's hard to get him to see the power of reading, etc.
It's funny, Alex, we have the opposite problem. Our daughter reads too much and it gets in the way of studies. But my son is a gamer. We required as a family to have 3 components in our children's lives. The first was, I guess there were 4. There were 4 components. The first was, they could pursue the thing they were passionate about. Let's say my daughter was reading and my son was gaming. The second was they had to have some type of either extracurricular or school-focused physical activity that they were involved in. The third was that they had to be part of, and in our community, it was our local church group. It could have been Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. It could have been any number of ways to kind of pursue from both a social and larger embrace of life concept. And then the final was, we had a couple things as families that was sacrosanct. Well, we had family game night, we had family date night, and then we routinely would go ahead and shut everything down and have dinner together. And those four factors that we put into place, created really important structure. So everybody in the family was involved in physical activity, spiritual activity, mental activity, and family activity.
So John, also Alex's son, is with us at the academy. So is there anything, we may be able to tell him that we do here at the academy while he's with us?
Well, I would encourage you to ask that question in your debrief. When you meet with the instructors, but that would be really specific to your child. We don't have the spiritual component at SOAR unless the kids want it. And in previous years, we've had kids be able to attend church services if they wanted, but this last year there has not been church services available. But there, your instructors may have some, quality suggestions in relation, Alex, to your individual son.
All right, great. We have Beth saying, time management is a huge issue. School animation projects take up all his time, spends breaks to finish them. I think she was commenting on something you were saying earlier. Sorry about that.
It's so true. And schools have done an awful, just absolutely horrendous job of learning how to balance how much time they're asking folks to educate themselves and the workload that has created against what it's done for our kids. And shame on them. We have lived that life, and it's been absolutely brutal for us personally. The amount of work that is being required of our kids. Because they're not, they weren't being taught effectively in that Zoom environment. And so I think that what we ended up having to do was be much more focused and aware of what the expectations were, and dig in as parents and provide lots and lots of support to help accomplish those tasks. And it became everybody's full-time job in the evening to make sure that our daughter was able to successfully complete everything that she needed. My son, I don't know how he did it, but he sailed. He loved the virtual environment and succeeded in a way that was quite remarkable.
And we just also had a statement from Stacy saying that she has a similar concern as your daughter, where all she wants to do is read, listen to Audible. It's not bad that she's reading. There are worse things, but she's extremely involved, but they are worried about her sleep. It's gotten to the point where we have allowed her to check out books at the library. She's reading, but at a loss of time.
Yeah.
We have actually had to create a library. We've had to take all of her books out of her room because they're everywhere. Because if we take the Audible out or the Alexa, she'll grab a book, and literally had to take them all out and have those check them out because she'll stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning reading.
I feel your pain. I know it. I know it well. What we've done is I will pluck her phone or device, and then I will check on her every 10 or 15 minutes to make sure that she's still staying focused on her assignments. And then I'll give her a half hour of free time before going to bed. And then I'll make sure that I collect any materials that might keep her up. And then I'll continue to check. And again, I recognize how much external accountability that is. We understand who our daughter is. And so we're making choices to try and create that environment for her that is going to allow her to be successful. But she requires more accountability from us to do that. It's been a struggle at the Wilson household.
How do you know when it's time to reduce the structure of accountability to parents? This is coming from Gail.
Well, Gail, to be perfectly honest, in your situation, yesterday, and that's just terrifying to hear. I know it's terrifying to hear, but I cannot stress that, that when you transition into that role, you want to be a supporter and a cheerleader, and you also want to kind of have ideas on the side about what lifelines you can toss and have them ready, but not necessarily be mitigating or managing their success or their failure. And that's where a coach or a therapist could really be a pivotal role in providing that support.
We have something from Tina here. She said, my 28-year-old son has made so much progress. Right now, he's struggling with the boring parts of running his own business, like time management, bookkeeping, marketing. Can't save enough to move out. He keeps turning down resources. I think he doesn't understand what it really means. Paralyzed more and more as tax day comes close. How do we dance between giving him room to grow and rescuing?
Well, that is such a, I mean, and that'll be our last question. And that really is the crux of it, isn't it? Because here's an example of a young man who is 28 and still requiring the kinds of significant supports from parents that are critical. Now, you're really faced with two choices, here. One is your son will his business will either succeed or failure on his merit. And if you choose not to rescue and tax day comes and it all falls apart, is there a learning opportunity that comes from that? Now, again, I'm not suggesting what you do. I'm just simply saying that most entrepreneurs succeed and fail over and over and over until they find the right path. And there's probably some incredible benefit to learning, these are the mistakes I made and these are the real life consequences. If your 28-year-old son doesn't have a chance to experience those real life consequences because he's continually being rescued, then those coping mechanisms aren't being developed. Now, that having said that, let me argue the other side. The other side is, what are the pitfalls and what are strategies that you can do to overcome, and you can put conditions on your support. So, if you can present to me a thoughtful plan about how you're going to manage time management, what you're gonna do about bookkeeping, and what you're gonna do to make sure that you can increase your marketing, and how next year you're gonna be able to make sure that those taxes are paid, then we're willing to invest this level at this small amount to help make sure that those pieces are in place. But we're not going to do so unless we're able to get clear, considerate plans from you as to how you're going to move forward. And that creates both the lifeline and the accountability and the opportunity. What you want to avoid is, we're willing to support you no matter what, because sometimes failure without plan or planning without failure do not afford young people the opportunity to learn from their mistakes and to grow from those experiences. When you rescue somebody from failing, from having a failing experience, you've deprived them of the opportunity to learn from that choice. And that's so painful and so hard. So, I would go one of those two routes. I would either take a hard line. I don't know your 28-year-old son nearly well enough, but my guess is that if it was my son in that situation, I would probably say, I need good quality action plans on what you're going to do to mitigate these issues. And if I support those, and I believe that you've done the work and the energy, and I think that you can implement those plans, then, you could see an additional investment from me to provide you with the support that you need. Okay. Well, again, I want to thank all of you for attending. Our webinar series is in response to your request for what you need and want out of SOAR, and we deeply, deeply appreciate all of you. We could not do what we do without your support as stakeholders. My final plug to you is this: you probably have received an email but this is SOAR's 45th year, and we are doing a $45 for 45 years, and every bit of that money is going to scholarships and support. So consider making a donation this week of $45 to support the scholarship fund, and we appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next month. All right, bye-bye.